Right, guys, I wanted to do a little video about narrative because I think it's an important part of how we get over stuff. Really, is to do with how we see it. Right, there's not a lot you can do about things that have happened to you, but all those things contribute to who you are now. So the way you look at them is going to determine, obviously, how well you integrate them into your life, overcome them, absorb them, or get over them, whatever you decide that you want to do. So if I was to give you an example of let's take a woman who's been cheated on 3 times, 3 different guys. Third one was her husband. She's got kids with him, and she's going for a very tough few months while she tries to repair the damage. Right. So looking at the situation for her in terms of, okay, how do you process what's happened? If you need to process what's happened, how do you decide where to leave it and where to stop asking more questions? And how do you want to move forward? Like, what's your, do you want to try and make it work? Do you definitely want to leave? Like, we would go through all that, right? So that's sort of one way of looking at it, which you would call, I guess, solution focused, right? You're just looking at, like, okay, that's what you got. What do you do about it? Yeah. Now let's give another approach. Let's say that you've got a woman, she's been cheated on 3 times. Third one was her husband. She had kids with him and everything. Now she's crying herself to sleep every night. She's asking herself what was wrong with her. She's wondering why he did this and how could he do this to her. She's thinking through every last little detail about the situation that's going on, and she feels like there's no hope for her anymore in terms of relationships. Right. So that's the same situation, the same thing has happened to her, but you're looking at a different part of the scenario. Right. You're looking at a different angle of it. And that angle is going to be, first of all, it's going to be more difficult to deal with. And secondly, it's going to obviously make her feel a lot worse than she already is, which, if that's even possible. But then, I've got some emotional music queued up here, right? So let's say now that I've got this emotional music in the background, and you've got this person, and she's feeling really, really low now. She's been with 3 people, 3 guys, trusted them, put all her trust into them. The third one she had kids with, thought that was it, set herself up for life. Everything's going to be great now because I've got the man of my dreams, and he's ripped the rug from out underneath me now. I'm never going to be able to love again. I'm never going to be in a place that I can trust a man again. I'm in a really, really bad place now, and it's all because of him. I'm never going to move on. I need to know every little detail about what happened. Did he love her? Was she better than me? When did it start? When did it end? How much did it mean to him? Right? Let me stop this tune. Right? Even worse, isn't it? You know what I mean? The emotions that are involved in that way of looking at it, as well as having some like emotive music on in the background, makes the whole situation even worse. But we're still talking about the same case. We're still talking about the same scenario. So that, I hope that example kind of helps you to see the angle that I'm coming from. There's another. I can give you another example, which was really useful for me actually. Like years ago, I had to do like a safeguarding course for a school, and one of the things they said was they asked the question. There was about 25 of us, I think, and they said, when I mentioned the term social worker, what's the first thing you think of? And we were like, well, kids getting taken away. That seems to be like the first thing that crops up in a lot of people's heads. So then she was like, okay, we're going to put an image up on the screen here of a 10-year-old boy he's covered in bruises, arms and legs, right? And that is the person that the social worker's going to see. She's going to visit their house. Now, what do you think? And it's like, okay, so most people thought there was some physical abuse there. Social care has been called in to, take the kid away, extract the kid from the family and put him in a safer environment, right? But then when you start looking, she's like, well, let's investigate where the bruises are. They're all sort of below the elbows, below the knees. So those are normal places where kids would get bruises. Now let's think about how the house is set out. There's a lot of knee-high tables and chairs, right? And then he's got like 3 brothers, and they're all quite boisterous. So there's a lot of fighting going on. And then you find out that he's got, he's also on top of all that, he's got one of those diseases where you bruise easily when you're tapped, like, it completely changes the surface story. You know, it's just, I suppose this kind of links in as well with our judgment system, right? Which is why it's important not to be so bloody judgmental and to think straight away that we know why somebody's doing something, because there's usually a much bigger story behind their actions than what we know, obviously. So we're assuming a lot of stuff by doing that. And the reason that I wanted to do this video is because a lot of people that I meet, they really struggle with this kind of narrative, okay? Because they're looking at the stuff that is going to produce worse feelings, yeah? And therefore it becomes like a bit of a vicious circle, because you feel crap, hard to get out of that mood, focus on the negatives, you don't know what you got till it's gone, looking at all that, and it makes it very, very difficult to move forward with something. Now, obviously that gets easier with time, but you can also speed that time frame up by choosing to approach it in a different way. So it's all about how you look at the situation that's in front of you. There's always different ways to see it. So, I always felt like, for myself, I almost felt like I was in single traffic all the time, stuck behind some old dude who's driving at like 30 miles an hour on the motorway, and I'm moaning in my car going, why the fuck are you speeding up and all that, but not realising I'm actually on a motorway, there's other lanes. And the first thing you've got to do really is understand that there are other lanes that you can get into. You still might not be ready to actually overtake yet and get into them lanes, but if you know they're there, then there's a possibility that maybe you can get through life in a different lane. But if you only think that there's that lane, then you're going as fast as the person in front of you. And that's not really what you want to be doing. You want to kind of be looking at things in a way that helps you to have a healthier approach and a more balanced approach to yourself as an individual and to other things around you. I also think it's quite hard because you've got, social media, you've got all the narratives that get thrown at you, all the spin that you get on certain news stories and whatever that come along. And all those things contribute to making life quite complicated, quite confusing. So, in my day-to-day job, what I'm helping people do is figure out a better way to look at their situation, basically, If they can't change the situation, then all that you're really left with is trying to find a better way of looking at it so that you don't kind of feel so lost, really. And I mean, I'll give you an example from my life. This is actually probably going to be quite tough. I hadn't planned on doing this, but it did spring to mind because when I was growing up, my family were very much like a contained unit. Like, we didn't really have social events. We didn't really do much outside of the family. My dad used to just go to work and come home, and that was it. Like, he never went out with his friends. He never went out like anywhere. He didn't go to work, Christmas dues. He just literally was all about home life, and my mum was the same. And I won't go into all the reasons for that because it's not fair on my parents, but there was definitely reasons behind it. My dad didn't even see his family. I think I met my dad's dad once in my life. That was it, before he died. So it's a very sort of closed environment. And then when I sort of grew to the age of maybe 15, 16, started getting girlfriends and everything, like, them wanting to go out and do something with their friends was just like, what? Why do you want to do that? What the fuck? And it gave me so much anxiety, jealousy. I became controlling about it, manipulative and everything, because I've grown up with that narrative in my head that that's what family should be like. I'm now like 44 years old and I still struggle with this sometimes. Like if my wife's out for ages, I'm thinking, where is she? And all that. She shouldn't be out all that time. And I have to have a real chat with myself to try and make sense of it, because I've got this kind of narrative in the back of my mind that's like, no, she shouldn't be doing that. Like, you're a family. You should all be together all the time. And obviously I know as an adult how unhealthy that would be if all we were to each other was everything. Like, that's not a good place to be at all. And I know that 100%. But I've got this little thing in the background that's like, jealous of when she's doing something else, because I think that means that she's not completely dedicated to my family. And that's just ridiculous. So, that's how hard it is. That's how easy it is to create a narrative. And I didn't realise, honestly, like, I got to the age of like probably 28 and girls used to have a moan at me, and then relationships never lasted. But I just used to think, well, obviously you ain't the one for me then. I never really looked at the fact that the only thing that connected every single failed relationship I'd had was myself. And I didn't really look at it like that. So the self-improvement side of things was really lacking, you know. And nowadays, like I say, I have to really work on that. Even now, you know, I'm a lot better with it than I've ever been now. And I've learned that I have to kind of align myself with someone. I wouldn't be very good with someone who was sort of like going partying and clubbing all the time and everything like that, because it wouldn't be something that I could be that relaxed about, you know what I mean? But my wife, she's really good like that, because she's a little bit more sociable than me, but not like massively. So it's not like she's on that end of extroversion and I'm on this end of introversion, and we're sort of, you know, about here. So it's all right. But I've still got to watch myself, because if I get that like destructive part of myself that comes out from when I was a kid, you know, learning all that, then it causes problems. And so something to be aware of for myself. And so I've had to change that narrative, you know, of what I learned as I was a child. And that's a hard thing to do. I mean, if you think about it, you know, I was around that until I started thinking about, like, why is that? What's going on? I was probably about, I don't know, I guess 13, 14 when I started to think that's not normal. Surely that's not normal, you know. I'm never allowed to have friends round or anything like that. What the fuck's that all about? All my other friends have friends round. Why can't I? Sort of thing. So, you know, there was a lot of stuff around that. So that's an example of how a narrative can get created, and then you can live that narrative out without even realising it, and it costs your life when it's not even something that's actually sensible to do, but you haven't evaluated it because you still got the mentality that you had when you learned that was the way life is. So, yeah, it's just, you know, I hope that sort of helps in some way to sort of, you know, it's a good idea to do journaling with this, because, I mean, writing things down is the same as thinking about them, apart from the fact that when you write it down, you're getting it out, and it's not just rattling around in here where it just goes from one thing to another, and you get, like, you know, the fact that you've got this little mole on your hand, and the next thing you know, you've got bloody cancer. You know, you write things down and get them out of your head and onto a piece of paper makes a lot of sense, and you can sort of rationalise it a little bit better, I think, that way. And again, then you can see what your narrative is, and you can maybe write an alternative narrative or something like that. You know, you can analyse your narrative and critique it and start finding out what it is. Very important thing, a very helpful thing as well. If you can have a look at it, then that'd be great. All right, nice one. I'll speak to you again soon. Bye.